Hi, as of now, there is little doubt that artificial intelligence is treading on our toes. We already almost lost visual arts to it, and maybe novelists will be next. As of now, AI cannot write full books, but it's pretty good on paragraph and sentence level. Since we cannot really stop the progress of technology, we may as well learn to use it in creative and exciting ways. Today, I want to share a few fun ways in which you can use artificial intelligence while writing a novel or a short story. First, I would like to start with a thing that you might not know. You may have seen ads for AI virtual writing assistants, and they seem to be growing like mushrooms. Many of them actually use one model behind the scenes, and we're going to focus on that model. This artificial intelligence model is called GPT-3, and it was developed by OpenAI. And by the way, I'm in no way affiliated with OpenAI. I'm not making any money of it. There are two reasons why you may want to use GPT-3 as opposed to other writing assistants. First, it will allow you to be more creative than what a predefined interface can do. You'll see what I mean very shortly. Secondly, it will allow you to save money. Think about it. If some other company uses GPT-3 under the hood for their virtual assistant, then they will still have to pay OpenAI to use GPT-3. And then they will charge you on top of that to use their interface to GPT-3. So you're better off learning to work with the original. And that's what we're gonna do. Before trying to apply the model, we need to understand what exactly does it do. Without going into technicalities, the best way to think about it is that this artificial intelligence model can do one thing. It can look at any text and continue it in a plausible manner. That is all. Look at a chunk of text and continue it in a way that makes sense. Right now, it may seem dry, boring, or unimpressive, but believe me, after we look at a couple of examples together, you won't think this way anymore. So here's the GPT-3 interface. We're going to be using the Playground tab to generate our results. Registration is straightforward. I'll leave all links in the description. So let's start with a very simple example to see what does it mean that the model continues the text in a plausible manner. Today, and let's leave it at that. See how it continues.
Today, I want to remind everyone that it is not too late to donate to the Trans Lifeline. The Trans Lifeline is a national trans-led organization that connects trans people in crisis with trans competence.
That's a plausible continuation, right? You cannot argue with that. But if we want to do something more restricted, maybe we can say, today I went to, let's click submit, the park to play tennis. I played tennis at the park today. All right, well, fair enough. That's a plausible continuation. I'm not sure why it is rephrasing it, but... So this is the simplest and potentially kind of boring way to use the model, but it can still help you, get over your writing block. So for example, if you're not sure what you want to write, what kind of scene you want to do, you can start writing it, and when you're stuck, paste it into GPT-3 and see what GPT-3 suggests should happen. By the way, this is a fun failure mode. I wanted to see what happens if I just take a paragraph from Stephen King and ask the model to continue. So what happened is that the model just started reciting actual book from which I copied the first paragraph, word by word. So it just shows you how much this model actually knows. It from memory recited for you a chunk from Stephen King. But that's obviously not what we want to do. The cool part is that you can ask this model to do almost anything you want by showing it a few examples. So this is a bunch of text I wrote for this model. First, we have a cue for question. I remember a paper boat floating down a gutter. It was the fall of 1957. The traffic lights were dark. It rained all week. So this sounds like terrible, boring prose with no detail. As an answer, I actually copied a paragraph from Stephen King's It. So we have the terror, which would not end for another 28 years, if it ever did end, began, so far as I know or can tell, with a boat made from a sheet of newspaper floating down a gutter swollen with rain. So, and then it goes on, right? So we have actually kind of the same events, but with much more detail and with a much more eerie atmosphere. So this is what we give to a model as an example of what we want from it. We want the model to transform questions into answers, right? Because if we have such a structure, right, this Q turns into this A, then this Q is turning into some A that should make sense. So the model knows nothing other than how to continue text, right? But because of what kind of text we give it, it will make sense. So let's see what it comes up with. All right. So our question is, I once went to a beach in California in the summer of 1967, surfing in big waves. The crowd watched and cheered. And so at first I thought it was just glitching and accidentally copying the same paragraph, but no, it is doing what we want. So let's read it. The terror, which would not end for another 28 years, if it ever did end, began, so far as I know or can tell, with a boy caught in cross-swell of two big waves while surfing off a beach in California. He went under in... Sorry. He went under and came up again, struggling and gasping. The crowd on the beach cheered. The boy went under again and did not come up. The crowd waited a moment, and then he still did not come up. They began to scream. Oh, and when he still did not come up, they began to scream. All right, so as you see, this is not the best. This is not the best writing, but it's very fun. But you can imagine what kind of stuff you can do. If you want it to expand your sentences into generic horror rather than specifically Stephen King's It, what would help to explain to the model what you want from it is to add other examples. So write something different here from some kind of other horror book, or you can even write it yourself. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have a paragraph that I would like to edit. How can we use the knowledge embedded in the GPT-3 model to pretend that we have a professional editor? It generally doesn't matter where you take your examples from, but here I have found some website or some blog that speaks about editing and proofreading, and they give examples of that. So we have original document, and we have a proofread version. So let's copy it into GPT-3. So this is our original document, and this is going to be our proofread version. And now let's add some kind of paragraph that we think needs proofreading.
I have seen a boy riding a big surf wave. He screamed for help, but nobody answered or reacted to it. At last, one brave bodyguard noticed the boy and ran into the ocean. He swam towards the boy and saved him, bringing him on shore.
Here I have written a paragraph that I would like the model to proofread. And notice it has a couple of mistakes. For example, here we have scream instead of screamed, even though the whole thing is in past tense. And instead of brave, we have breve, I don't even know how to pronounce it, and things like that. Additionally, the paragraph is not well written, but we're speaking only about proofreading, so I don't expect the model to improve the phrasing. So let's see what happens. So as you see, instead of I have seen, we have I saw, which makes much more sense. He screamed for help, which again is a correction that we needed, and so on. So as you see, we gave an example of proofreading to the model, and the model managed to proofread our own writing. Now let's do the same thing, but now with the example of editing. So I'm going to go on the same website, but again, you don't have to copy it from somebody else's website. You can, for example, have part of your novel edited by a professional editor, and you can just give a couple of examples of how your writing was transformed from the non-edited to the edited version, and ask the model to continue editing your novel in the same way. So let's take a look at the editing example. So the original paragraph is the same, but now we have a copy-edited version. So please copy-edit this paragraph. Dear model. Let's see what happens. In this case, the editor basically did not change the phrasing because it thought that the phrasing is good enough, but the mistakes were still fixed. Let's add a few things to this narrative, to the story, so that the editor can fix something and improve the sentence structure and not just fix the typos.
Bringing him on shore. I was glad about the fact that the boy was saved. It was very extremely encouraging that the young boy was so luckily happily saved. Cheerfully and gleefully prancing along the beach, I ran towards the bodyguard to inform him verbally about how amazing it was the thing that he did.
Okay, so I have expanded our little stupidly written story, and now it has even more atrocious writing examples. So for example, cheerfully and gleefully prancing along the beach, I ran towards the bodyguard to inform him verbally about how amazing it was the thing that he had, how amazing it was the thing that he did. So this is not only not grammatical, but it's also very redundant, right? So inform him verbally instead of said or tell. So let's see if our model can fix that as an editor. All right, I think our editor did a decent job. Instead of about the fact, right, it dropped about the fact. I was glad that the boy was saved instead of I was glad that about the fact that the boy was saved. So this about the fact is typical bad writing, and we see that the editor managed to fix that. Additionally, what do we have? So yeah, we had very extremely encouraging, which is stupid. We have very encouraging, which is not ideal also, but at least that's something. So the last sentence is unfortunately not ideal, right? So it still says inform him verbally, but I guess maybe your editor would also keep it thinking that perhaps you're trying to say something here. Why are you using this construction? But if you look closely at those two examples, definitely, again, there is a lot of improvement, and you could imagine that you could have paid a professional editor to edit your work, and you could have gotten a similar result. So in short, as long as you can give a couple of examples to the model of what you want to do, it will follow your lead and it will try to apply your demonstration examples to whatever text you give it. And you can do editing, you can do proofreading, you can expand, short outlines into full paragraphs as we've seen before, and you could do many other things. And I hope that you have a lot of fun playing around with this model and that this video was helpful.